Hello, I'm finally making another Java lesson. It's been a while, and this is the last basic Java lesson. And we're going to get into more complicated stuff after this, a lot longer code, and what I think will be more fun. So, what we're going to do today is debugging. And first of all, before we start debugging, I want to go over how to do functions, because as you know, you have your main, which goes like this. And then you can make other functions with public static outside of your main function, outside of the brackets that close your main function, public static, and whatever data type you may want if for it to output a name and whatever variables it needs to take in. And you have your function, you have it return whatever you want it to return. And you can call it with the name, give it the correct data types as input, and it'll go here, do all this, and then come back to your main function. So so now that's how you establish functions, which are really useful for organization and testing larger code. So first of all, basic debugging, what you can do is put breakpoints just by clicking on the side here, wherever you want to. And then what you're going to do is when you go here, instead of running it, you're going to debug. And what this will do is it'll first load up the console so you can put in your input. And then here, it'll open the debugger. So you can see it gives you all your variable values and whatever you may have as a variable at the time will appear there. And you can see it'll stop at the breakpoint and you can see the value of num1, you can see the value of num2, and you can see that this statement is true. And then the main two things you're going to do in this debug console is this button, step into, which will just go to the next line of the code. And now we can see num1, num3, statement is true. You can see all the values, or you can hit the resume program button, which will just keep running the program until you get to the next breakpoint. And that's debugging, and you see we still have all of our values. And this is useful if you just want to go step by step through your code and see where it isn't working. But this isn't as useful if you have a large chunk of code with all of this, all these functions, all the loops. It's going to take forever to go through this manually. So what you're going to do is you go here, you go to code, you hit generate, and you're going to generate a test. You give it a name and just hit OK. So what that's going to give you is this import function and this class. So what you're going to do is for every function that you want to test, you're going to call this line of code, and then you're going to say void. I usually put it as the same name of the function just to be clear what I am testing. Then you initialize all the variables that that function will need, and I'll usually put that what it should be outputting in another value, and you'll put assert equals and whatever data type you need. If it's a string, it's just assert equals, but you can put whatever data type. So assert array equals in this case, then you'll call your file name dot the function that you're testing, give it all the input, and then compare it to your output variable. So that's how you make a test, this code, and then a void function with all this, assert equals. You can put multiple test cases. You can do all sorts, as many test cases as you want. And what you will do is you will run this, and it'll just tell you these tests were successful. If there's any unsuccessful ones, it'll tell you what it did output and what it compared to what it should have outputted. And here it'll tell you how long each test took, which is good if you're trying to optimize for time. Normally, when you're doing these test cases, you're not just going to put these values that are normal and generic. You're going to try and put the weirdest cases you can think of, like all zeros, all extremely large numbers. You want to try and break your code to make sure that a user cannot break your code. You need to find all the issues, all of the most random things that could possibly happen. And this is just easier. You can find if a certain function isn't working rather than going through your whole code step by step. You just test each function and you know if it works or not. So that's going to be the last basic lesson. And we're probably going to go into more complicated stuff and projects. There's not going to be any problems for this lesson. I'm just going to give you guys the instructions for a tic-tac-toe project with functions, with player input. Maybe if we get to it, a computer to play against. And yeah, I'll work through that step by step with you because it might be a bit difficult considering we've just finished learning the basics. But yeah, and hopefully more lessons and more stuff because I have more time now. Yeah, that's it.